Hello, everybody, and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for the 3rd of March. I think it is Monday, the 3rd of March. Time is really flying by. We're into the third month of the year. Spring will soon come. Ash Wednesday will be in 2 days, and Lent will be upon us. Amazing, isn't it? Last week, I was listening to a webinar, I think it's called, that had women in leadership roles talking about leadership through crisis. You know, what happens when you're working in a community or working in a job for which you're dealing with crisis on a regular basis. And one of the women who runs women's shelters in London, Ontario, which is a fairly big city, relatively speaking, and she has lots of different groups that she has to be responsible for as the executive director. And she made a good comment about you don't prepare for crisis in a crisis. And I got thinking about that. I'm a big planner. I make plans to make plans, and I'm always trying to figure out how will I deal with things. I like to be prepared. I like to think ahead of what might happen. So in my life, I live, of course, some of you might know that my husband's military, and so I live in a world of military speak. So we have things like SMECs and other things, but we also have a thing called a reverse timeline, where you think about what's the outcome. So if my reverse timeline is to get to the Brandon Wheat Kings hockey game tonight and in my seat by 6:30, I know that my end state is at 6:30 with my butt in my seat. And I know that that means I need to line up at the hot dog booth on the concourse at the rink by 10 after 6 because it'll be long. Which means I need to get to the rink by 6, which means I need to get out of the house by 10 to 6, which means I have to get home by 5:30 so I can change, put on my hoodie, my jersey for the game, grab my wallet, get out the car with my husband. You do this so that I can plan my whole day ahead of time and know, okay, I need to be doing this at this time. A reverse timeline. I like to live my life like that. I know it sounds very, not impromptu and um, spontaneous, but I am totally cool with not being spontaneous. Too many other things in my life pop up all of a sudden, and I realize I have to deal with them immediately. And so I live my life in a manner that teaches that I try really hard to have my reverse timelines in place and to make sure I've got all the resources I need. Like if I'm working on a Thursday or Friday night and I'm going home for the weekend, I thought, I've got my backpack, I've got my computer. What do I need for Sunday? What do I need for Saturday? What work am I going to take home with me? Have all that stuff organized so that I don't have to come back to the office during the weekend. Things like that. I try to be very organized. And over the years, I have discovered that I am actually not bad in a crisis. I'm actually pretty good. Um, I think probably not if the crisis is mine, but if I'm dealing with somebody else's crisis, I think to I seem to be able to think clearly and make decisions in such a way that I think they're helpful. But ideally, I don't want to have to learn things in a crisis. I don't want to learn how I deal with a crisis in a crisis. I'd like to have myself well prepared. And that's one thing this young woman said was you don't prepare for a crisis in a crisis. Absolutely, Murphy's Law says there's going to be something that's going to happen in a crisis that you didn't anticipate, that you could not have planned for, and it's just part of what makes it a crisis. But if you have everything else as a leader, if you have everything else running well, then you won't need to be planning for the crisis in the crisis because you'll already have planned for it. For instance, if I work in this building, this cathedral. It is relatively old, and there are lots of parts of the building that look like they're kind of falling apart, or if you leaned on them, they would. And I noticed that there are fire extinguishers throughout the building. I can tell you where a couple of them are, and other ones I can probably tell you when I walked into the room. I could probably say it was over there because it makes sense. If something happened in this building and a fire started, I know where the exits are, the ones I can actually get out of. I have a window. Apparently, it's the egress window, but I can't even get up to it. So, and even if I did, there's a cement window well with a cage on top of it, which would be useless. So that's not really good. But I know that I can go out my door and turn right and run up the stairs and then out into the alley. I can go out my door and turn left and I can go through the parish hall, the lower parish hall, and up the stairs and out to the 13th Street. I know I can run through the crypt, which is underneath the actual cathedral itself. I know where the escape routes are. So in a fire crisis, I know what to do. I'm still probably going to panic, but I have some of the information, most of the information I need, including my phone, from which I can call 911. I have prepared for this crisis ahead of time. That is what good leadership does. Good leadership isn't simply someone who knows how to rally the troops. Good leadership isn't just somebody who knows how to answer the right question with the savviest answer. Good leadership is someone who actually does the work of figuring out a few of the things ahead of time. Problem solving, before the problem starts. I am still learning how to be a good leader. I've been a leader for years and years and years between the different roles I had as a deacon and priest in the church and now as a bishop. And there will always be things that I still need to learn more about. And indeed, there will be crises that come up that I will be learning as I go, flying by the seat of my pants. But as a good leader, it's my role, it's my responsibility to be prepared for contingencies, what might happen. Hopefully they never would, but if you plan for them, then you'll be ready for them. It's also my role as a leader to make sure it's not just that I know how to handle a crisis, but the people who work for me and work with me know how to handle a crisis. Now, that does not mean that at any point that because I am the leader, I have to be the expert in everything. But I do need to create a team around me where there are multiple experts for different things. For instance, I have had my first aid training years ago. I know the basics of it, and I think I probably wouldn't completely panic. But knowing that somebody else on my team has up-to-date first aid means that if an emergency happens when we're together as a working group, which is a regular thing, that person will be ready to take over that particular, that emergency. There's other things, financial things, knowing that our Greg, our finance guy, he knows the ins and outs. So if I get a phone call and it's, a dire phone call from the bank or something, this has not happened, this is just an example, I don't have to panic that I don't know the answer. I have to say, can you wait just a minute because I know who does. Part of being prepared for something going wrong as a leader is making sure you know your information and you know your personnel. Who do you have that you can reach out to? Who can you ask the question of? Who do you have in your little black book or your Rolodex that says, okay, the basement flooded, I can call Four Seasons Plumbing. A tree fell through the window. This is who I can call to come and fix this problem. Quite often, we discover this information because we need it. But then if we're smart leaders, we keep the information for next time. Sometimes, like I said, crises just happen, and we go by the seat of our pants and we figure it out and hope we could do the best. However, there are times, many times actually, if we're really utilizing our leadership well, that we realize that the experiences we've had, the times we've had to observe someone else, and even just those little things that we pick up, sort of like happenstance, they all file back there in our filing cabinet of our heads to say, in a moment of crisis, break the glass. In an event of fire, break glass. We have that information in us. The thing is, we need to remember that in a crisis, we are still the leaders that we are. Just because something is a crisis does not mean we're automatically going to flip out. It might be tempting, but truth is, if we have been leading, if we have been learning, if we have been doing all we're called to do, then we'll be okay. And we'll discover that those parts of the crisis for which we could not prepare for until we were in the midst of it are things we can handle, or they're things we can ask other people to help us handle. It's not a do or die thing. As leaders in the church, in the world, in our schools, in our workplaces, in our homes, we have a lot more gifts and skills and resiliencies than we realize. You just have to allow yourself to tap into them and recognize that there's always opportunities to learn more. And you never know when that crisis might come up. When you say, well, that's why I learned that. Isn't God good? Have a great day. I hope you have no crises today. But if you do, I pray that you'll have the presence of mind to just breathe deeply, say a prayer, and know that you got this.